For 6 years, I thought Jessica and I had built something unbreakable. We met in college, one of those classic love stories where a simple coffee spill turned into late night talks, stolen kisses, and promises of forever. She was everything I had ever wanted in a partner, kind, intelligent, and full of life. When we got married, I believed we had something rare, something people spent their whole lives searching for. Our life together was simple but beautiful. I had a stable job in finance, and Jessica worked as a freelance graphic designer, setting her own schedule. We traveled when we could, had date nights every Friday, and spent lazy Sundays on the couch watching old movies. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, there were moments that didn't make sense, small things I brushed off as nothing. Like how Jessica started taking late night walks alone, claiming she needed fresh air. Or how she suddenly became more protective of her phone, never leaving it unattended. She also started working extra hours on projects that never seemed to end. Yet there wasn't a noticeable change in our finances. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? I didn't question any of it. I trusted her. I was proud of the fact that we had built a marriage on honesty and transparency. So when I saw that name, Michael, my love, on her phone, something inside me broke down. My mind raced through all the possibilities. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was some weird inside joke. Maybe I was overreacting. But then I read the text. "I miss you, baby. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time." And in that moment, everything shifted. I looked at Jessica, sleeping peacefully beside me, her face relaxed, unaware that her secret had just been exposed. I wanted to shake her awake and demand answers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to pretend. I hadn't seen anything at all. Instead, I sat there, frozen, my entire reality crashing down around me. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a betrayal. And no matter how badly I wanted to deny it, I knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow, I would find out the truth. The next morning, Jessica acted as if nothing had changed. She woke up, stretched, and smiled at me. "Morning, babe," she murmured, pressing a light kiss to my cheek before heading to the bathroom. I just stared at her. Last night, I had spent hours staring at the ceiling, replaying that message in my mind, convincing myself that there had to be a reasonable explanation. But seeing her now so calm, so normal, sent a wave of anger and confusion through me. How could she lie so effortlessly? I decided to play along. "Morning," I said, forcing a smile. She went about her routine. As usual, humming while making coffee, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. And I watched, memorizing every move, every expression, trying to find some crack in her perfect act. But she was flawless. If I hadn't seen the message with my own eyes, I never would have suspected a thing. That thought alone terrified. And me, by the time she left for a client meeting around noon, I had made up my mind I was going to follow her. I wasn't the kind of man who checked his wife's phone. I had never felt the need to spy on her or track her whereabouts. But this wasn't a small doubt that could be ignored. This was a gut feeling, the kind that gnawed at my insides, telling me something was terribly wrong. So I waited 10 minutes after she left, then grabbed my keys and followed Jessica's. Car weaved through the city streets before stopping at a quiet cafe on the other side of town, far from where she usually worked or met clients. I parked a few spaces away, keeping a close eye on her as she stepped out. And that's when I saw him. A tall man, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down, was already waiting for her. Jessica's face lit up the moment she saw him. She walked straight into his arms, hugging him like she hadn't seen him in years. And then, before I could even process what I was seeing, she kissed him, not a quick peck. Not a friendly, accidental brush of the lips. A real kiss. Deep, familiar, intimate. My hands clenched around the steering wheel as my stomach twisted into knots. I felt sick. Jessica, my wife, was standing in broad daylight in a public place, wrapped up in another man's arms, acting like she belonged there. I wanted to storm inside, grab her, and demand answers. But something stopped me. Instead of reacting, I forced myself to watch. She pulled away, smiling up at him, her fingers lightly tracing his arm. He laughed at something she said, leaning in closer like they had done this 1,000 times before. And that's when I realized this wasn't new. This wasn't some random mistake or impulsive act. Jessica had been living a double life. I had been too blind to see it. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my heart pounding. How long had this been going on? Who was this guy? Did he even know she was married? I needed answers. I grabbed my phone, snapping a quick photo of them together before stepping out of my car. My legs felt heavy, my pulse hammering in my ears. As I approached, Jessica still hadn't noticed me. She was too caught up in him, too lost in whatever fantasy she had created outside our marriage. I stopped a few feet away, my voice coming out calmer than I expected. Jessica, her entire body, stiffened. Slowly, she turned around, her eyes widening in shock. The color drained from her face as she realized who was standing in front of her. For a moment, no one spoke. The man beside her frowned, looking between us. Jess, who is this? And just like that, I got my answer. He didn't know about me, which meant my wife had been lying to both of us. Jessica's mouth opened, but no words came out. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. The man beside her, Michael, I assume looked just as confused as I felt, his eyes darting between us. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to break something just to release the storm raging inside me. But all I could do was stare at the woman I called my wife for the past 6 years and wonder who is she. Jessica finally found her voice. Donald, I can explain. I let out a bitter laugh. Explain? You mean explain why you've been sneaking around behind my back? Or explain why you're kissing another man in broad daylight? Michael's expression twisted in shock. Wait, what? He turned to Jessica. What is he talking about? Jessica swallowed hard, panic flickering in her eyes. Michael, just give me a second. But he wasn't backing down. Who is he, Jess? I already knew the answer. The way he said her name, the way he looked at her. He wasn't just some fling. He cared about her. I clenched my jaw. I'm her husband. Michael's face drained of color. His body stiffened, like I had just struck him with those words. His eyes darted back to Jessica, searching for any sign that I was lying. She dropped her gaze. That was all he needed to see. He took a step back, shaking his head. No, no way. He let out a breathless laugh, running a hand through his hair. You told me you weren't married. Jessica reached for him, but he pulled away. I should have felt satisfied watching her secret unravel. Watching her get caught. Watching her crumble under the weight of her own lies. But all I felt was emptiness. She had broken us, and now I wasn't sure if there was anything left to save. Michael backed away, still shaking his head. I need to go. His voice was distant, barely above a whisper. I can't do this. He turned and walked off, leaving Jessica standing there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I didn't move. I just watched her, waiting for her to say something, anything that could explain why she had done this to me. To us. Tears welled up in her eyes. Donald, please. I held up a hand. Don't. My voice was hoarse, tired. Just don't. She reached for me, but I took a step back. That single movement shattered something inside her. I could see it in her face, the realization that there was no going back from this. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered. A humorless chuckle escaped my lips. You never wanted to hurt me? I repeated. Jessica, you built an entire life behind my back. Do you have any idea what that feels like? She wiped at her tears. I was going to tell you. When? I cut in sharply. After you got bored. After you decided you were done playing both sides. She looked away. I don't know. That was the worst part. She didn't even have an excuse. She had chosen this, not once, not twice, but over and over again. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. How long? Jessica's shoulders trembled. A year. A whole year of lies. A whole year of her sneaking around. A whole year of me being nothing more than a backup plan. My hands curled into fists, my nails digging into my palms. I gave you everything, Jessica. My voice was quieter now, the fight slowly draining out of me. I loved you. I trusted you. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too, Donald. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. No, you don't. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because she knew it too. Whatever love we had, it had died the moment she chose to betray me. The weight of it all finally settled on my chest. The heartbreak. The anger. The sheer exhaustion of trying to understand how someone you love can destroy everything so easily. Jessica sobbed, but I couldn't comfort her. Not this time. I turned away, my body feeling heavy, my heart feeling hollow. Because this wasn't just the end of our marriage, It was the end of us, And no matter how much it hurt, I knew I had to walk away before she could hurt me any more than she already had. Jessica sobbed behind me, but I didn't turn back. I had nothing left to say, and I didn't want to hear any more of her lies. I needed to get out of there before the weight of everything crushed me completely. But just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a spam notification or maybe a message from work, anything that could distract me from the chaos unfolding in my life. Instead, I saw an unknown number flashing across the screen. I almost ignored it, but something about the timing made me answer. Hello? My voice was rough, exhausted. There was silence on the other end. Then a deep voice spoke. Is this Donald? I frowned. Who's asking? The man exhaled heavily. My name is Daniel. I need to talk to you. It's about Jessica. My entire body went rigid. What about her? Another pause. Then he said something that sent ice through my veins. She's my wife. For a second, I thought I had misheard him. I turned back toward Jessica, who was still standing in front of the cafe, wiping her tears, completely unaware that my entire world had just shattered for the second time in less than an hour. What did you just say? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm her husband, Daniel repeated. We've been married for 4 years. I felt the air leave my lungs. 4 years, Jessica and I had been married for 6. That meant I pressed a hand against my forehead, my thoughts spinning. Jessica had been married to both of us at the same time. A wave of nausea rolled through me. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just betrayal. This was something much worse. I swallowed hard, gripping my phone tighter. How do I know you're telling the truth? Daniel let out a bitter laugh. I was about to ask you the same thing. Then his voice turned sharp. Look, I found your number in some of her documents. At first, I thought you were just a coworker or a friend, but then I saw messages. I saw emails. And I realized you weren't just some guy, you were her other husband. My knees nearly buckled. I turned to Jessica again, and this time she saw me. The expression on my face must have been enough to shake her, because her lips parted in alarm. She knew what I had just discovered. I locked eyes with her, my grip tightening around my phone. Daniel, I said slowly, my voice shaking with rage. Where are you right now? I'm in Bridgeport, he replied. But I'll come to you. I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. No need. I ended the call and marched straight toward Jessica. Her face drained of color. Donald, listen. Shut up. My voice was cold. I had no more patience, no more sympathy, no more love left to give her. She swallowed hard, glancing around like she wanted to run. I was going to tell you, I scoffed. Oh, yeah. When Jessica? Before or after you decided to add a third husband to the list? She flinched. It's not what you think. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, really? Because I just got off the phone with your other husband. Her entire body went still, that was it. The moment she knew she couldn't talk her way out of this, the K was suddenly too small, too quiet. The world around us blurred, leaving only the two of us locked in a suffocating standoff. I need you to tell me the truth, I said, my voice like steel. All of it. Right now. Her lower lip trembled. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, my phone rang. Again, I glanced at the screen, expecting Daniel's number. But it wasn't him, Dot. It was a blocked number. My stomach tightened as I answered. Who is this? A slow, measured breath came through the line. Then a voice I didn't recognize whispered, "If you want to stay alive, stop asking questions." My blood ran cold. Jessica's eyes widened, as if she already knew what I was hearing. I gritted my teeth. Who are you? The call disconnected. I stared at my phone, my heart slamming against my ribs. My breath came in short, uneven gasps. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was something much bigger, Dot and Jessica. She was hiding a hell of a lot more than just a second husband. The air around us felt thick, like the entire world had. Closed in, leaving only Jessica and me in a suffocating silence. My hands trembled as I stared at my phone, my mind racing. If you want to stay alive, stop asking questions. The words echoed in my head like a warning bell. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating wife. This was bigger, much bigger. I lifted my gaze to Jessica. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line, her hands gripping the fabric of her dress so tightly her knuckles turned white. She knew. She knew exactly what was going on. I took a step toward her, my voice steady but ice cold. Who the hell was that, Jessica? She didn't answer. My patience snapped. I grabbed her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to stop her from running like I knew she wanted to. No more lies, no more excuses. Tell me the truth. Her eyes darted around as if looking for an escape. Donald, I squeezed my eyes shut, taking a deep breath before opening them again. Are you in danger? She hesitated for a second. It was small but enough for me to see the truth before she even spoke. Yes, she whispered. My stomach clenched. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at her for what she had done to me. But now, standing this close, seeing the raw fear in her eyes, I realized something I hadn't before. Jessica wasn't just a cheater. She was trapped. And if that call meant what I thought it did, then she wasn't the only one in danger. I was too. I released her wrist, stepping back. Start from the beginning. Jessica ran a shaky hand through her hair, her breathing uneven. It's not what you think, Donald. I never meant for any of this to happen. That's not an answer. My voice was hard. Tears pooled in her eyes, and for the first time since this nightmare started, she finally looked genuinely broken. She swallowed hard. I married Daniel 4 years ago. He was different back then. Kind, loving. I thought I had found the perfect man. She let out a shaky laugh. But after the first year, everything changed. He got involved with people, bad people. I frowned. What kind of people? Jessica's gaze flickered to the phone in my hand. The kind that make threats like the one you just got. My pulse spiked. Jessica continued. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was just business, that it wasn't my concern. But then things started getting worse. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone. He put cameras in our house. He started controlling. My money, my life wasn't mine anymore. She wiped at her face. I tried to leave. I tried to get away, but every time I did, something bad happened. To my family, my friends. So I did the only thing I could. I ran. I swallowed. And ended up with me. She nodded, her chin trembling. You were my fresh start, Donald. You were everything I wished Daniel had been. And for a while, I thought I could pretend my past didn't exist. I let out a humorless laugh, shaking my head. So what? You just thought you could juggle 2 marriages? I didn't have a choice. She snapped, desperation lacing her voice. You don't understand. If I divorced Daniel, he wouldn't just let me walk away. He would have killed me. The weight of her words pressed against my chest, Not as much as I wanted to hate her, to despise her for what she had done. To me, I couldn't ignore the truth. Jessica wasn't just unfaithful, she was running for her life. And now, because I had gotten too close to the truth. So, was I exhaled sharply, pinching the bridge of my nose. So, why now? Why did you keep saying him? Why risk everything? Jessica hesitated, biting her lip. Because I was trying to get out. I frowned. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel started suspecting something. He had me followed. I was afraid that if I suddenly disappeared, he'd find me. So I played along. I acted like nothing had changed. That's why I met him at that cafe. That's why I sent those texts. Her voice broke. I was trying to buy time to make him believe I was still his, until I could find a way to disappear for good. The pieces clicked together in my mind, and my anger slowly started shifting into something else, something terrifying. I turned my head slightly, scanning the streets. If Daniel thinks everything is normal, then that means Jessica paled. He's probably watching us right now. My blood turned ice cold. I grabbed Jessica's arm and pulled her toward my car. We need to go. She didn't argue. I barely got the door shut before peeling out of the parking lot, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. My mind was spinning. I had come here thinking my wife was just a liar and a cheat, but now I had just stepped into something deadly. Jessica was shaking beside me. What do we do? I sucked in a breath. First we get out of here. Then we figure out how to fix the mess you got us into. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable. You still want to help me? I clenched my jaw. Did I? Everything in me told me to walk away. To cut her out of my life and let her deal with this mess on her own. But another part, the part that had once loved her, couldn't leave her to die. We're in this together now, I muttered, eyes locked on the road ahead. So we either find a way out of this or we don't make it out at all. Jessica swallowed hard, and deep down, we both knew this wasn't over, not even close. The air between us was thick with tension as I sped down the highway, my grip on the steering. Real tight. Jessica sat beside me, silent, her eyes fixed on the road ahead, her fingers nervously twisting together. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. The weight of what had just happened settling between us like a boulder I'd come here expecting. To catch my wife in an affair. Instead, I discovered she had another husband, was being watched by dangerous people, and that now, my own life was hanging by a thread because I knew too much. I inhaled sharply. Jessica, do you have any idea who sent that call? She hesitated before shaking her head. It could have been Daniel, or one of his men. I glanced at her. How deep is he in this? Jessica swallowed hard. He works for them. At first. It was just a side job, something shady but small. But over the years, he got in too deep. He launders money for them, Donald. And anyone who crosses them. She trailed off, her fingers clenching in her lap. I filled in the blanks. They disappear. I exhaled sharply, my mind racing. I had been furious with Jessica for betraying me, but now I was stuck in something I didn't even understand. We can't go home, I muttered. Jessica turned to me, her eyes wide. What? I shook my head. If Daniel has people watching, they know where we live. If we go back, we're sitting ducks. Her face paled as she realized the full extent of the situation. I ran a hand through my hair. We need to find a way out of this, fast. Jessica hesitated before whispering, I have cash. A lot of it. I frowned. What do you mean? She bit her lip, looking away. For the past few months, I've been taking money out, little by little, from Daniel's accounts. Just enough that he wouldn't notice. I was planning to run, Donald, for good. I processed her words, my emotions tangled between anger and disbelief. She had been planning this escape without telling me because I was never meant to be part of it. But now I was. I sighed. Where is the money? Jessica hesitated. At a storage unit downtown. I made a sharp U-turn. Then that's where we're going. We reached the storage facility an hour later. The place was nearly empty, just a few old trucks parked by the lot, their owners nowhere in sight. Jessica led me to a rusted storage unit near the back and unlocked it with shaking hands. The door creaked open, revealing a few suitcases inside. Jessica walked over, unzipped one, and flipped it open. My breath caught. Stacks of cash. Tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. I let out a low whistle. You weren't playing around. Jessica didn't smile. This is our only chance, Donald. If we take this, we disappear. We get on a flight, cross the border, change our names. I stiffened. We? She froze, realizing what she had said. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. I had spent the past day convinced I would never forgive her. That she had destroyed everything we had done, and yet here I was, still standing beside her. Still trying to get her out of this alive. I ran a hand over my face. We'll figure it out later. Right now, we need to. The sound of screeching tires cut me off. Jessica went rigid. I turned toward the entrance of the storage facility, my stomach twisting. A black SUV had pulled in, moving slowly, its windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. I didn't need to. I already knew who they were. Jessica's breathing turned ragged. They found us. I grabbed the suitcase, slammed it shut, and pulled Jessica behind me. Stay close. The SUV came to a stop a few feet away. The doors swung open. 3 men stepped out. One of them was Daniel. The other 2, I didn't recognize. But I didn't have to. The way they moved, the way they looked at me, it told me everything I needed to know. They weren't here to talk. Daniel took a slow step forward, his lips curling into a cold smile. Well. I was wondering when I'd finally meet you. Donald. Jessica's grip on my arm tightened. I squared my shoulders. What do you want? Daniel chuckled. I think you already know. He tilted his head toward Jessica. Did she tell you what she stole from me? I didn't blink. The money? Daniel smirked. No. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a USB drive. He twirled it between his fingers like it was nothing. Jessica stiffened beside me. Daniel clicked his tongue. She didn't tell you about this part, did she? He let out a mock sigh. You see, Donald, this isn't just about a jealous husband and a cheating wife. He narrowed his eyes at Jessica. This is about the fact that she stole files that could put very dangerous men in prison. My pulse spiked. Jessica hadn't just stolen money. She had stolen evidence. And now, we weren't just running from a jealous ex. We were running from killers. Daniel's smirk widened. So here's how this goes. You give us the money. You give us the drive. And maybe I let you both walk away. Jessica took a deep breath. Then, before I could stop her, she pulled a gun from the suitcase and aimed it directly at Daniel's head. Everything froze. The 2 men behind Daniel reached for their own weapons. But Daniel held up a hand. Amusement flickering in his eyes. Wow, he chuckled. Didn't take you for the type, Jess. Jessica's hands didn't waver. This ends today, she said. Her voice steel. Daniel grinned. Oh, sweetheart, you don't get to decide how this ends. I took a slow step forward, my heart pounding. Jessica, put it down. Her eyes flickered to mine. For a moment, it was just us. 6 years of love, of betrayal, of chaos all coming. Down to this moment, I shook my head. We do this smart, not reckless. Her lips trembled. And then she made a choice. She pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. Daniel grinned. Nice try. Then chaos. I grabbed Jessica and ran. Gunshots rang out. The air exploded around us as bullets slammed into the storage unit. We sprinted through the lot, my pulse hammering. We reached my car. I threw open the door, shoved Jessica inside, and peeled out of the lot just as another shot shattered the back window. My heart pounded. My hands shook. We had escaped. For now, Jessica turned to me, her face pale, her breathing uneven. We can't run forever, she whispered. I tightened my grip on the wheel. "No," I said, "but we can fight." And as we disappeared into the night, one thing became clear: this wasn't over, not until one of us was dead.